Hey y'all, so today we are talking about chapters 26 to 36 of The Eye of the World. And so this is the third quarter of the book, and I am really enjoying it so far. It doesn't feel as much of a burden as what I kind of anticipated. Not a burden, I guess. That's kind of a bad way to put it, but more of like you have to really pay attention and write down a lot. And I am writing down a lot, but I feel like I'm kind of carrying along with it very well. A little bit better than I thought I was going to. Okay, so we'll go ahead and talk about chapter 26, which is Whitebridge, I believe. And Matt is starting to really go down a weird path, and he seems angrier and sullier than ever, which isn't really what we've seen in Matt from the beginning when we were back in Edmondsfield before everything happened. And I feel like it's probably a combination of the dagger that he took that he shouldn't have taken, and the fact that he's just not used to being chased and fearing for his life. All this traveling, he's never been used to that. He's just been used to Edmondsfield and having, I don't want to say an easy life, but compared to this, an easy life. And even though he gets on my nerves because he's dumb sometimes and says things he shouldn't say, I'm starting to feel for him because he is just, you can just tell he's just going down that path of anger and I guess resentment at this point, paranoia for sure. So I can really feel that coming from him, and I feel like it's going to get even worse until we can get rid of this dagger or find some kind of safe haven for a while so he can calm down a little bit. I think it might take a little while, but I'm kind of getting worried about him. And I know a lot of people, I don't really know any spoilers, but I do know a lot of people love Matt as a character. So I'm kind of really curious as to what's going to happen in the future, because he's technically my least favorite out of the Edmondsfield group. So we'll see. I'm getting really worried about him, that's for sure. I know when they get to Whitebridge and the innkeeper starts talking to them about like a crazy man asking about people that would fit Matt, Rand, and Tom's description, my first thought was Pat and Fane, and I kind of wonder, is he now a dark friend? Did something happen to him to create him, cause him to be a dark friend against his will? It's so random, because we knew that Pat and Fane was barely mentioned really. When he disappeared, everybody thought he was dead, and then he shows back up when Rand finds him, and he's just completely crazy. And then now it's not mentioned by name, but that's my assumption, is that it's still the same guy and he's still crazy. So I'm kind of curious as to how that's going to come back into play soon. So we'll see. But we also know that at the end of this chapter, Tom sacrifices himself. And his story about his nephew just broke my heart, and we're just like barely halfway through the book at this point, and he's dead, and I just can't see it. I don't accept it. I don't think he's dead, because it's just cruel if he's already dead halfway through the first book. He was a great character. He's somebody that Rand and Matt really needed. And, he didn't like Aes Sedai, he didn't want them going to Tarvalin, but they really needed Tom, and him being willing to sacrifice himself, I think was a very, very touching moment, especially after you hear, a little bit of his backstory about his nephew. I'm just hoping that his best knives are going to save him, because I just don't want Tom to be dead yet. That's really what it is. Okay, so chapter 27 is Shelter from the Storm, and so we are back with Perrin and Egwene and Elias. And it's kind of funny because they're, at this point, they're still with the traveling people, and so the girls are, what I'm assuming is maybe a type of belly dancing is kind of the vibe I get from what I read. So it's really funny to see all these girls with the traveling people kind of flirting with Perrin, and him having absolutely no idea what's going on and being very uncomfortable. I think it's very funny. And of course, when Egwene joins in, Perrin doesn't like it, which is definitely kind of like a big brother vibe that I really enjoy how their friendship is growing and how they're getting closer together, with the time of just it being them two, basically, with Elias. So I really love that. And I just find it really funny that the girls are are teasing him, and he wants none of it. Egwene, you know, she's off, you know, having a grand old time with Aram. She's obviously, I think she's still worried. She's just trying to let herself be distracted while she can. And I don't really mind that. I mean, she knows that everything is still serious. She's not delusional. It's just she's trying to let herself relax a little bit, let herself enjoy what little time that they do have where they feel relatively safe. And I don't begrudge her that, but I can also see why Perrin kind of worries about her point of view, her perspective, because it is kind of worrisome. So I'm really glad that when they finally do go to leave the traveling people, that Egwene doesn't want to stay with them. I wasn't really worried about that, but you never know. With, you know, Egwene was always about the adventure, so that she could have easily gotten swept up in the way of the leaf and Aram, and just kind of let herself be led astray away from Perrin, try to convince Perrin to stay with them maybe, or at the worst case scenario was Aram coming with them. So I'm glad none of those things happened. It was really nice to see, you know, Egwene immediately just, yes, I'm leaving with Perrin, that's what we're doing, and not really even have doubts as to whether she wanted to stay with these people or not. So that was a really good moment. What I did wonder was, what about Perrin's dream triggers Elias to leave? Because we know that he's waiting for something, but he won't tell what this something is to Matt. But honestly, it kind of seems like Elias doesn't even know what he's waiting for. He's just waiting for something. He'll know it when he sees it, basically. So I kind of see that, but I can also see Perrin's frustration. But I do wonder what about that dream or vision triggers Elias to be like, okay, it's time to go. So that's definitely interesting. I also was a little worried about this vision, because in this vision, a wolf is set on fire. And I don't know because if you remember from another vision that Rand had, like, he had a physical prick on his finger. And then whenever, what's his name, Balsamon, when he killed those rats and like snapped their spines, that's what happened in real life at the end with all the rats. So I'm really kind of worried about this wolf. I don't think it ever really goes into whether there was another wolf that was physically hurt after Perrin's vision. So I want the wolf to be okay. I hope that he wasn't hurt. Rats are bad enough, but they're rats and they're not as cool as wolves. And I want the wolves to be okay. So that kind of worried me. And I don't think, when I went to kind of glance back through it, I didn't see where it was ever clarified that a wolf was actually hurt or not. So I hope they're okay. When they actually go to leave, Elias has this whole exchange with Rain, and you can really tell that Elias knows their customs very well. So I kind of wonder if Elias maybe wasn't part of their people, you know, a long time ago, way, you know, years back, maybe because he knows these customs so well. But then I also remember that the woman said that they're lost, so I kind of feel like maybe they might be shunned if they leave the Way of the Leaf. So I don't know if Elias really would have been a part of the Way of the Leaf, but he's had enough experience with them to really know their customs. You can see that Elias really shows respect to these people, because even though he obviously does not agree with the Way of the Leaf, he still gives them enough respect to finish that custom and talk about that either he will find the song or someone else will. And I thought that was a really good indicator of Elias's person, because he doesn't have to do that, especially when you can tell that he really just doesn't agree with their way of life at all. So I just really liked that moment where you can really see the kindness of Elias more than just him taking care of Perrin and Egwene. And that brings us to chapter 28, which is Footprints in Air, and we're back with Lan, Moraine, and Nynaeve. Nynaeve is also another character similar to Matt, where she's just very angry, and I completely understand why she is angry, but I wouldn't want to put up with her at all in real life. I can see that she's a really good character to read about and really get behind and understand, but in real life I wouldn't want to put up with her. She's just so argumentative. She's staying with Moraine and Lan, and she just wants to argue with everything that they do and say, no matter what it is. Because I know at one point, like, she was arguing with Moraine about something, and then later on in the chapter, Moraine says, well, we'll go ahead and do this, which is what Nynaeve was arguing about in the first place, and then Nynaeve is once again arguing against doing that, even though it was her idea in the first place. It just really bothers me. She's just being contrary to be contrary, and I don't like it. But once again, she has a lot of reasons for feeling that way. So it's hard to really begrudge her these angry feelings, because she's worried about these kids. That's why she came after them in the first place. So she's really worried about them. It's really difficult to deal with her right now, at least. So I kind of hope that eventually she'll kind of learn to trust Moraine a little bit, to kind of, or at least stop arguing with her so much, because Moraine is trying to find them. She is doing what she can to find them at this point. It's just, Nynaeve, I feel like things that she says out loud to people is not what she thinks in her head, which we all do, you know. We are all like that to a certain degree, but I kind of wish she was a little more honest with herself, because she goes back and forth with not wanting the power, still completely denying that she may have this power, still having that prejudice against people that can channel. So that's still ingrained in her, but she'll say, well, I'll just get the power so I can kill you, basically. It's a weird thought process on Nynaeve's part. It's like, do you want the power or do you not? She just at this point, she just wants the power so she can attack Moraine, because she hates Moraine so much. So that's a little annoying. I don't know. I know she's going through a lot. She's going through her own changes, you know, realizing that she's going to be able to channel according to what Moraine is telling her that Egwene is. She's lost all these kids, so she's got a lot going on. I hope it kind of settles soon for her. So then we're on to chapter 29, which is Eyes Without Pity, and we just got a little small Nynaeve interlude, and then now we're right back with Perrin, Elias, and Egwene. At this point, they are running, in essence. Elias, at the beginning, you're not really sure if they have a need to have all this paranoia, and because, you know, they're not even cresting hills, they're going around them so that they're harder to see, which makes a lot of sense. But Elias's anxiety made me really anxious reading this chapter. I felt on edge the whole time. It's really great writing to really bring that out in me. Not that I never do, it was really noticeable in this chapter. Foxes and ravens are my absolute favorite animals all the time, so it really bothers me that the ravens are so evil, which, I mean, to be fair, it makes absolute sense. I'm not saying that, but then they kill a fox, and it just makes me sad, but that's just something personal. But it does show that, you know, they are pretty brutal, and that our characters do have something to fear from these ravens, even though they're not just a fox, but still there is definite fear and a real reason to have that fear. It was pretty hard to read. I love that Egwene got to kill the raven that saw them, because at one point there was a raven that happened to see them before it flies off, and they know that it saw them, so Perrin starts to wind up his sling to kill the raven, or try to, and Egwene kills it before he can. That was really cool. That was a good Egwene moment. I loved it. They keep going, and like I said, you know that it is so much intense fear that crazy things can go through your mind when you are severely worried for your life and for those that you truly care about. So when they're worried about the ravens seeing them, like, they know ravens are behind them, they know they're ahead of them, they're trying not to be seen, and Perrin starts kind of thinking about killing Egwene if they were seen by the ravens and the ravens were going to kill them anyway. He keeps thinking about the fox that the ravens kill, so he kind of starts thinking in his head about killing Egwene with his axe, just that way she doesn't have to suffer. I can understand his point of view, but it's actually kind of scary. That thought process is very worrisome, at least to me. My first thought was, there was a movie, I want to say it was a Stephen King adaptation, but don't quote me on that. It was called The Mist, and I remember, I'm not going to give anything away, but it had like a lot of giant bugs that would kill people and mist. You can't see through the mist, basically. Just a few feet around you. So I remembered that ending, and I just, it worries me about Perrin having that train of thought, because you never, ever know what is going to happen. And I just don't think that I could kill my friend preemptively, because you never know what is going to change in any kind of instant. What if Egwene could have gotten away? What if the Ravens kill Perrin, and while they're killing Perrin, she can get away and still live? So it's just kind of one of those, I don't like this thought process, but I also, it's a lot of stress and anxiety, and he feels, there's obviously gender roles in this novel, so he kind of probably has this feeling of he needs to protect Egwene, because he is still the male figure here. So I can understand why his brain goes down this road. I hope that he kind of can calm down enough to change his mind about that in the future. Okay, so Children of Shadow, which is chapter 30. We're still with Perrin and Egwene. They have, once they get into that steading, the magic safety area, so they're feeling a little bit better. They get some water, they get some rest. So they're all that fear is kind of draining out of them. Perrin is obviously feeling bad about having those thoughts of killing Egwene, so that makes me feel a little better about it. But Egwene and Perrin have this really beautiful moment where Egwene asks Perrin if he will dance with her on Sunday when they get back home, and he says that he will. And it's such a touching moment, and I love when the characters have these little moments, and it always seems that they have these little moments with Egwene, and I feel like she is just, and deep down, Egwene is a true, kind soul, and she really just loves these boys, and she wants to go back home and live her life at this point, because maybe at this point when she's talking about going back home, she may have had her fill of adventure that she wanted, but she's just so sweet, and these moments with her are absolutely beautiful, and they seem very sincere. So I love that. And Perrin, he's probably my favorite out of the Edmondsfield Quartet. I think he is my favorite. I really admire him in a way, like his way to think through things. Even with his weird thoughts of killing Egwene, I still like his thought processes, the way he thinks, and his coolness. I like his, ability to stay calm. As someone who is not calm all the time, I appreciate that in someone. My husband is very calm, and that's what I need in my life. So I think I kind of see that in Perrin, and that's why I admire it so much. So in this chapter, they are attacked by white cloaks. Hopper dies. I actually had to put the book down for a few minutes because I was heartbroken over Hopper, which is weird because we really didn't get much of any of Hopper at all, except for like 2 paragraphs right before he dies. So I feel like that's another kind of showcase of Jordan's writing, where I cared about this character in the span of 2 paragraphs and was upset that he's already dead. It's just, it was very nicely done. I also don't like that the white cloaks call them bumpkins, country bumpkins. It's an insult, and I don't like it as a southerner myself, but it is what it is. They obviously have no use for these country bumpkins, so they are, I won't say kidnapped, they are taken in by these white cloaks. I did notice that the wolves say that they smell wrong, almost like a rabid dog. So I kind of wonder, and because it's called Children of Shadow instead of Children of Light, maybe they're posing as white cloaks? I don't know yet. There's not enough about that chapter. It really worries me because the title of chapter doesn't really match with these white cloaks who are supposed to be children of the light. They hit Perrin, which I didn't like, but I also understand Perrin's a little sassy right now. I kind of wish they would both just be quiet. It feels like Perrin he's obviously upset at the death of Hopper. He's feeling his connection to these wolves deepen as he's more accepting of this power at this point. And it feels like Perrin is more concerned with being right than living, because he's trying to convince these people that wolves aren't dark friends, basically. So, and he just has to keep saying, no, they're not dark friends. It's just, Perrin, calm down. Like, you're not going to prove yourself right. You're just going to get yourself and Egwene killed at this point. So I was kind of worried about how that was going to turn out, but it seems like they're going to let them live. And if these really are children of the light, they are terrifying. It's almost as though people of the children of the light, if they find somebody, if you're not a child of the light, then you're a dark friend. It doesn't matter if you really are a dark friend or not. They view everyone as either a child of the light or a dark friend. There's no people in the middle that just aren't children of the light but aren't dark friends. So that's kind of concerning. And I really wonder how Perrin and Egwene are going to get out of this. And I want to know what happened to Elias. So many things to worry about. So many. Okay, so chapter 32 is Four Kings in Shadow. And so now we have both of our Edmondsfield groups. So we have Mat and Rand and Perrin and Egwene. And they have both lost their guides, which is Elias and Tom. So that's really worrisome. They need their gods. They're basically children who have no experience in this world whatsoever. They need some help from these adults that actually kind of know a little bit about the world. So I kind of worry about that. The dagger is obviously causing, or I'm assuming is obviously causing Mat a lot of stress. He is constantly paranoid. He's constantly angry. He wants a bed to sleep in. He wants food to eat, which, I mean, obviously, if anyone is going to be cranky and mad if they're tired and hungry, and especially when they're also fearing for their life. So it's very understandable, but I feel like for Mat, it's exaggerated, especially because he has this dagger. I think the dagger has something to do with it. I'm just convinced at this point. He's got something going on with that dagger, and I know that the dagger has to be somewhat important because Min mentioned with her sight or whatever it's called, she mentioned that he had a rubied dagger around him. So it's obviously, I feel like it's this dagger at this point. So I know that it's somewhat important to Mat. We'll see. I kind of wish that he would go back to being, I know I was complaining about Mat being stupid, but and annoying and too happy sometimes, when before he even got the dagger, he was excited to go see Treasure. I kind of wish he would just go back to that, because this version of Mat is almost unbearable. I feel so bad for Rand, because Rand is obviously tired and hungry too. Now he's having to deal with Mat being a jerk, and Mat is just super paranoid about everybody. So all of these farmers he's convinced are dark friends, even though they're trying to help them, but yet the guy in the abandoned city that wants you to carry Treasure to his horse is fine. It's just that his paranoia is really getting to him. This chapter is mostly about them traveling, and they are able to earn their way with food and bed because of them being able to play the flute and juggle. It's really saving their ass at this point. Chapter 32 is Four Kings in Shadow. 31 was actually Play for Your Supper, which makes more sense. I was a little confused myself, so I'm sorry. But Play for Your Supper was where it's talking about them playing for their supper. So in Chapter 32 is when they get to Four Kings. And I feel bad for these women in this inn, like men just groping them. It's so infuriating. But anyway, I'm sure that's just how inns are, because they seem to accept it. But sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do. My cat's playing. So the innkeeper is clearly shady, and it's kind of funny that Rand points out that he's a skinny innkeeper, so he obviously doesn't trust it, but Mat is fine with him. Mat is fine with this obviously shady innkeeper. He just wants to sleep in a bed and get a meal. So that's also kind of annoying. So you can tell, or I think, I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but I feel like the dagger is truly affecting Matt's ability to think critically, because anybody that is not a dark friend and is trying to help them isn't, acting strangely at all. Matt is immediately distrustful of them, glares at them, won't take his hand off the dagger. But with this obviously shady innkeeper, Matt is fine and is more worried about sleeping in an inn and getting food than being safe. So I feel like this dagger is truly altering his ability to think critically about who is a dark friend and who isn't, and almost swapping the two. So that's really worrisome. But the merchant turns out to be a dark friend, and he's talking about, them being halfway belonging to his master, which is similar to what was being said to Rand in his dreams, or visions, whatever. So, and of course, Rand saved them just in the nick of time, and so I'm curious to see if Rand is going to turn out to be sick, which is usually a good sign that he's used the power and channeled, like he has in the past. Everything kind of happens so fast when they're trapped, and it's hard to tell who really is the channeler. I'm assuming it's Rand, but he takes out the wall so they can escape, but Matt is blinded, so obviously that's going to have some issues for them down the road, and I kind of really worry about them. But I know Matt was talking about, let's just go with them and we'll try to escape later on the road. That was really worrisome. I did not want them to do that, so I'm glad that they pulled magic out of the air and got themselves out of that situation. Sometimes, I know in some books it feels cheap when things just happen and it's, they got lucky because he obviously doesn't know how to channel the power, but it's still, keeping and makes sense because he fears for his life. He doesn't know how to channel, but when you're afraid for your life, you can do crazy things. That adrenaline going, it makes sense. So I don't feel like it was cheap at all for them to be able to escape at that point, just like it wasn't cheap when Rand had that boom swing across on the ship and kill the Trolloc. So I've seen some people say that it feels cheap because sometimes in other books it can feel that way. Just something happens to fall out of the sky and come save them, metaphorically speaking. So I don't really feel like that in these books so far, though. So chapter 33 is The Dark Waits, which is a very ominous chapter title. Rand is obviously very sick, which I kind of expected at that point, but Matt is really struggling. He's struggling with his eyesight, but Matt does finally start remembering to keep his mouth shut about where they're going, and then Rand opens his mouth because he's sick and can't think straight. So it's like it's one or the other at this point, that one of them is always running their mouth. They can't get on the same page. And they can't get on the same page. So it's just a little frustrating, but once again, Rand is obviously a little sick, so we're just gonna let it go. So he's having trouble on his own. Rand has another dream. Balsamon is constantly just saying, "You belong to me," and I really don't like that phrase. It's personally bothersome. Him just constantly saying, "You belong to me." You can tell it's indicative of an abusive relationship, and I just don't like it. So I can really understand why that fear and dread that Rand is feeling every time he has one of these visions and dreams really just takes it out of him. It makes a lot of sense because I completely understand where he's coming from. This chapter was a little hard for me to read, not only because of Balsamon constantly saying, "You belong to me," and that's really troublesome in and of itself, but Matt is having trouble with his eyesight. He's practically blind at this point, and he's crying because he's afraid that he's never going to get his eyesight back. And it breaks my heart because my father was blind before he passed away, and he would sometimes have just really bad days of where he would just cry because he lost his eyesight. And I feel so bad for Matt. It just breaks my heart, and I feel a little closer to Matt at this point. He's going through a lot, and it's hard to remember that sometimes when he's running his mouth or doing something stupid. But that moment with Matt really touched me, and now he's too precious, and I want him to be protected at all costs at this point. But that's just from personal anecdotes. So later on, he does get much better. His eyesight comes back. So I was really glad to see that that was temporary, because I know that would be absolutely terrifying to be running for your life and then lose your eyesight. That's so terrifying. So I'm glad that he gets his eyesight back, and he seems to be in much better spirits now that he can see again, which makes sense. I think anybody would be so relieved to get their eyesight back. But Rand is getting even sicker at this point, and so I kind of wonder, because at the beginning when Rand was sick, he just really had a headache and it was hard for him to think through, but now he's getting fevers and, you know, almost delirious, just laying in the back of this wagon. And I kind of wonder if his sickness was kind of being held off for a little bit because he was so worried about taking care of Matt because of Matt's blindness, that now that Matt has his eyesight back, Rand he's kind of relaxing. He doesn't have to take care of Matt as much, and so he just kind of succumbs to this sickness that has been under the surface until this point. So I kind of wonder if that has something to do with it, just him almost subconsciously maybe channeling a little bit to kind of make sure he can get himself and Matt to safety, because Matt obviously couldn't help himself while he was blind and definitely couldn't help Rand. So I kind of wonder if that's maybe what happened, and that's why Rand suddenly gets sicker after Matt's eyesight comes back. At this point, they're in these stables having to sleep, and then the woman comes in, and she's obviously a dark friend, and Matt was gonna kill her, and Rand says no. I am kind of on the side with Matt on this. At this point, only Perrin has killed any people, because Perrin killed a couple of those White Cloaks, and that was a pretty big moment for them, because none of them had killed people. Rand had only killed a Trolloc before, but Perrin actually killed 2 people that were Children of the Light. So that's a big thing, is to take another person's life, even if they are trying to kill you. So I get Matt's point of view of just going ahead and killing her. That way, she's obviously a dark friend and trying to, you know, get them captured. So I get his want to kill her, but Rand convinces him not otherwise. So that was a little interesting. That's an interesting thing about Rand and his character, that he still doesn't want to kill anybody just because he can, you know, basically. They could still escape without killing her, so that's what he wants to do, and I think that speaks a lot to Rand's character. So chapter 34 is the last village. The Queen's guards, like on the way to this little last village, they're pretty vicious to people traveling on the roads, and so many people are going to see the false dragon. I'm really confused at this thought process of people. Why would you want to go see a false dragon and travel all these miles? It doesn't really sit well with me. I just don't understand that thought. So they get to this village, and a dark friend is telling people there that he's looking for 2 people that have the sword, that they stole it from him. So you can tell that it's already a dark friend there. And Rand gets in the wagon with the guy, even though the guy was not gonna go. Like, the innkeeper tells this guy that heard from the dark friend that they were looking for these boys. The innkeeper tells the guy that's going to take his wagon on in the dark of night to Camlin. He tells him, you know, it's not safe, don't do it. So I kind of expected something to happen for the rest of this chapter. But Rand and Matt, they go with the guy, and Rand ends up having another vision where Tom tells him that the queen is wed to the land, but the dragon is one with the land, and the land is one with the dragon. I don't fully understand what that means, of course, I'm not surprised, but it does make me think about the dragon and Dragonmount, and how Lews Therin he was the dragon and became Dragonmount. So that kind of makes me think about that, where he's one with the land, and the dragon, you know, one with the land, because he basically is Dragonmount at this point. He is the land. So, but I do kind of wonder what they mean by the queen is wed to the land. So I'm excited to see what that means. But they get their ride into Camlin in this guy's wagon, and nothing happens, which was really strange. I felt that anxiety throughout the whole chapter, just expecting something to happen, and nothing did. So it's okay. So chapter 35 is Camlin. They have finally arrived, and you can tell that the constant running is breaking Matt down. He is just completely surly and angry. He doesn't want to talk to anybody, even going to the Queen's blessing. He doesn't want to do it. He doesn't trust it. He says the city is too big. They're never going to find anybody that they were trying to find. And so Rand is saying, let's just go to the Queen's blessing. That's where Tom told us to go. Let's just go and see what is there. Maybe we'll find somebody. Maybe we'll find Tom. Well, actually, he doesn't say that, because I'm thinking maybe they'll find Tom, because Rand is still convinced that Tom is dead. So they finally get there. Like I said, Matt is just, he's so angry and surly. He just wants to sleep. He just wants to lay down and be left alone. So, but they find Master Gil, and Master Gil is going to take care of them, let them sleep there, give them some food, because they are Tom's friend. So I'm kind of hoping that this might be the place where Matt can finally get some rest and just recuperate his brain, and maybe he'll be better off after a few days here of good food and good rest, and maybe he can kind of breathe easy, and without that constant fear of being chased and being found and traveling, he can kind of find himself again, because he's just really struggling. So chapter 36 is Web of the Pattern, and we meet an Ogier named Loyal, and I am already super attached to Loyal. It just, especially his name, it reminds me of the word loyal. He has so much information about the world and the web and the wheel. It's so awesome, and I feel like Matt and Rand need some kind of companion. Someone that knows what's going on, knows about these places, even if his information is a bit outdated because he's from those steadings that we learned about with Perrin and Egwene. But I really like Loyal. He seems so nice and just so sincere. I really like his character already. He's kind of monstrous, and people mistake him for Trollocs, which is really heartbreaking and sad. And I want to see him with this group, but Rand tells him, you know, no, I don't think it's a good idea. And I get why Rand does that. He's obviously worried about Loyal's safe, and he knows that any attention that they draw to themselves, which obviously Loyal would draw attention to Matt and Rand if they were to travel with him, is not good when they're being hunted. So I completely agree with Rand's decision, you know, why he tells Loyal that he can't go with them. It's sad, and I was really hoping that Loyal would stick around, and he may come back in future chapters. This is the last chapter that I had left with, but I really like him. He had so much good information for Rand that I think would really come in handy. So I'm hoping we'll see Loyal further down the road, even if he doesn't stick with Rand and Matt at this point. So that is all of the chapters that I have read, 26 through 36, and I am really enjoying this book. I will, within the next week, I'll finish the last quarter and have the first book in the Wheel of Time completely done, and I am so excited. So stick around, watch for a video next Wednesday to complete the entire book, and we'll go from there, because I'm already excited to start The Great Hunt. I've already went and bought it, and I'm not stopping yet. So y'all take care. Bye.